Once again, our jurors and alternates have returned. Thank you. The defendant has returned. Thank you. And Mr. DeGuerin is here with him, Mr. Chesnoff, Mr. Lewin, Mr. Bailey, and Mr. Miata, Milius, Henderson, all here. Mr. DeGuerin, you may resume your examination of Mr. Durst.
Thank you. Bob, when we recessed, I was about to ask you about your relationship with Susan over the years leading up to basically the fall of 2000. You began to tell us that Susan had moved back to LA, and you walked her down the aisle for her marriage to Mr. Margolis. What was Susan's financial situation during those years?
Good.
What did anything change that? Her financial situation, that is.
Well, her trust expired, more or less in 1986. And then from going forward, she was living off her trust primarily, and she had written a few novels that earned a little bit of money.
Were you keeping in contact with her?
Oh, yes.
And we've heard some evidence about a play, a Broadway play, a musical, that she was working on with Mr. Kaufman. Were you aware of her relationship with Mr. Kaufman?
Yes. What was his first name?
Paul Kaufman.
Paul Kaufman. Well, they visited us, Debbie and I were living together on Fifth Avenue. And Paul and Susan came and stayed in our two-bedroom apartment for about a week and a half. And they were attempting to produce a play on Broadway, The Dreyfus Affair. And they were trying to do the most expensive thing you can do on Broadway, which is a musical.
Now, this was not a book that Susan had written, correct?
Correct.
But The Dreyfus Affair, for those history buffs, was a long drama, wasn't it?
I think in the early 1800s, a Jewish general was accused of bad things, and he was innocent, and they killed him anyway.
So that doesn't sound like the basis of a Broadway musical. What was the plan, if you knew it?
Well, you make a Broadway musical of almost anything, but it's very expensive to produce a musical. And I think it was Paul Kaufman's idea, and Susan used up what was left of her trust fund to try to produce this musical.
How long were they, or Susan, let's just take it one at a time, how long was Susan in New York working on this musical?
I think Paul Kaufman moved from Los Angeles to New York just to work on the musical, and Susan visited him frequently.
All right. What years are we talking about now?
Talking about 1987, 1988.
Okay. You were still in New York,
Yes.
and you and Debbie were living together?
I was living with Debbie Chariton.
Well, what happened to the musical?
It never went anywhere.
What happened to Susan's money?
It was pretty much gone.
And what happened to Susan? What happened to her?
Susan tried to live off. She was still hoping that she'd be able to make a movie from Easy Streets. She had a major argument with Linda Obst, which almost went to the point of Susan hiring a lawyer.
Where was she living?
She moved to a friend's apartment. She lost the house on Coin Street.
Let me stop you there. Tell us about the house on Coin Street. Was that something that Susan had?
Yes. When Susan first went to Los Angeles, she lived at 1527 Benedict Canyon Road for a year and a half. And then just before marrying Mr. Margolis, she bought a house in Brentwood on Coin Street, C-O-Y-N-E.
That's a pretty ritzy neighborhood, isn't it?
Yes. And Susan was able to borrow a whole lot of money based on the house.
Okay. Who did she live with at the house?
Paul Kaufman lived there. Well, I guess Mr. Margolis lived there for a little bit of while. They were married before he killed himself. And then when Paul Kaufman moved in.
And I think we've already heard from other witnesses that Paul Kaufman have 2 children.
Paul Kaufman introduced her to a banker at Countrywide.
And my question was about Paul Kaufman's children.
Well, when Paul Kaufman moved into Susan's house on Coin Street, I think both children went with him, Sarah and Nella.
And so when Paul Kaufman moved to New York, did the children move with him?
No, the children stayed with Susan.
And then when Susan went to New York, from time to time, and the play failed, what happened?
Well, the play failed. Paul Kaufman moved back to Los Angeles, and her and Susan, he and Susan, promptly broke up. But the children seemingly got along better with Susan than they did with Paul Kaufman.
Now, did you know and meet the 2 children, Mella and Sarah Kaufman?
I met them both extremely briefly when I visited her on Coin Street.
All right. Now, you mentioned that, I don't know whether you did mention, did she have to give up the house on Coin Street?
Yes, by maybe 1992. Countrywide loaned her a whole lot of money, and she couldn't repay the mortgage. I offered to help her, but she did not want to keep the house. She felt the house was a jinx. When she bought the house, she was getting married to Mr. and she was pretty sure that Linda Hopes was going to be able to make a movie out of Easy Streets. During the time she was in the house, both those things went south.
And so, what happened to the house on Coin Street, and where did she move?
Countrywide foreclosed on it.
Were you willing to give her enough money to keep her there?
I was willing to. She did not want to sink more money into Coin Street. She thought that was a mistake. and a friend of hers owned a condominium on Altaloma in West Hollywood and offered it to Susan for free.
So did she move there?
She moved there with Mella. Sarah went to San Francisco to stay with another relative.
Did you ever visit Susan, and in visiting Susan, visit Mella when they lived on Altaloma?
Yes, one time. It was a large one-bedroom apartment, so Susan was sleeping in the living room, and Mella was sleeping in the bedroom, and the 3 dogs were sleeping everywhere.
Where did you stay?
I thought this is a disaster.
Yeah. Where did you stay?
Oh, I stayed at a hotel.
Okay. So, how did Susan's circumstances evolve over the next few years? Oh, by the way, did you invest in the musical, the failed musical?
Small amount, yes.
Well, small might be relative. How much did you invest?
I gave them $25,000.
Okay. Did you expect to get it back?
No,
Did you get it back?
no,
Did that matter to you?
no.
So, so how did Susan's circumstances evolve over the next few years after she and Mella moved to the apartment on Altaloma?
She wrote and succeeded in getting published several novels about Las Vegas, and she had several treatments for screenplays accepted, and she worked all the time but made very little money.
During that time, were you helping her at all?
Yes,
How were you helping her?
I gave her money when she asked for it.
What years are we talking about?
By now it must be 1995.
All right. Seymour died and you were living in Northern California. We've gone through that. Let's take us up to the years between 95 and 2000 with Susan. What were her circumstances then?
Well, her friend eventually asked for her to get out of the apartment in Altaloma, and that's when she moved back to where she was first living at 1527 Benedict Canyon Drive.
Now you told us that she had previously lived at 1527 Benedict Canyon, and now she moved back to 1527 Benedict Canyon?
Correct.
Was that, did she purchase it or was it a rental or lease?
Well, it's very hard to rent something if you've got 3 dogs.
Well, she had 3 dogs and she lived there. What happened?
Around 1995, she moved there, and I helped her sometimes, and she supported herself mostly by these treatments to screenplays. She kept getting the treatments accepted, but nobody ever made a movie from one of her screenplays.
Okay. You use the word treatments, and I know a lot of people familiar with the show business and movies know what that means. Well, what briefly does treatment mean?
Well, I barely know what it means.
Well, okay.
It's kind of an abbreviated screenplay.
All right. So then, during that period, and let's say from 95 until the middle of 2000, Did you visit Susan?
Several times, yes.
Did you spend any Christmases together during that time?
I think so.
All right. Where did you go?
Canyon Ranch in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay. So now I want to talk about the fall of 2000, September, October, November. Where were you primarily living then?
September, October, November of 2000. I was primarily living in my condominium in Battery Park City and frequently living in the house I owned in Ridgefield, Connecticut.
Were you working in the Durst organization or not?
No,
And then in either late October or early November, you tell us, did you get some unpleasant news?
well, before I get to that, I'd like to say Susan visited me twice in Trinidad
All right, let me ask you about that then.
during those years.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Well, both Susan and Debbie Chariton each visited me a couple of times when I was living in Trinidad for about a week. And both of them, when I was driving them to the airport to go back to San Francisco, said pretty much the same thing. Bob, it's beautiful here. Everybody's real friendly. Your friends, Tony and Diane, are real good people. But what are you going to do? And by then I had been concluding that it was nice living there, but I wasn't finding anything to do. And I had decided to move to San Francisco.
Yes, San Francisco, and I'm sorry that I left that out. Did you get some property in San Francisco, in the town proper?
Yes, I sold my house in Trinidad in 1999, and in 2000 I bought a townhouse near Telegraph Place in San Francisco, and I bought a condominium on Jones Street.
I believe we have some documents from those two purchases. May I step over?
Did you see this?
No, well, they've seen it, but we haven't, not yet. Don't put it up yet. We have two deeds that I'd like to have marked. One of them is to, the address is 1220 Jones Street. Shows it was bought in September of 2000.
So it's a defense K as it's a deed or a bill of sale? What is it?
Yeah, it's a deed. It's a grant deed.
Grant deed for property on Jones Street in San Francisco?
Yes, yes, sir. And the other is a deed to 52 Telegraph Place,
Also San Francisco?
also San Francisco.
Okay, so that's Defense K, defense L.
The date on that one, too?
Yeah, well, this is L. Okay. When, the date on K is September 20th, 2000, and the date on L is September 22nd, 1999.
Okay.
Wait a minute. L was the,
L's Telegraph Place. Telegraph.
give that date once more, please.
Yes, September 16th, 1999.
Your Honor, I just indicated to Mr. DeGuerin that to make it easier, you can still put it if you want, but we'll stipulate that in fact that's when they were purchased. Those documents are not the easiest to read and track, so.
All right, so the record shall reflect those dates for the purchase of those 2 properties in San Francisco.
I think the first time, as far as defense L, counsel said September 22nd.
That's what I heard, but then it seems like it was
Yeah,
corrected.
yeah. Well, wait a minute, maybe my notes. Huh. Yeah, it's actually September 16th. I misspoke, Your Honor. September 16th is the date on the document.
Thank you.
So let me briefly show K. Show work.
Yeah, we're stipulating to it if you.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Court accepts stipulation.
Can you see that? That? On the screen is Defense Exhibit K. Can you see that, Bob?
Sort of.
All right, I'll read just the highlights to you. It's a deed that grants to Robert Durst, an unmarried man. Property is 1220 Jones Street. What was located at 1220 Jones Street?
A condominium.
Okay, this kind of got switched in time, and now let's look at L. L is a deed dated, put it up a little bit, September 16th, 1999 to, up the description. Keep going up, please. There's the description.
On the second page.
There we go.
So this is a 2-page document.
Yeah, both of them are.
I see.
It's actually more than
This page L is a 4-page document.
L is a 4-page document. I see, and the property description is on page 2? No, what page is that?
This is page 2.
That's page 2.
Thank you.
Well, at any rate, it's Telegraph Place. What was located on Telegraph Place that you bought?
A 3-story townhouse.
What were your plans regarding the Jones Street property?
I was going to live there while I renovated the Telegraph Place property.
Okay, and what were your plans for the Telegraph Place property?
I bought the Telegraph Place property prior, a year before I bought it. I told Susan Berman in a telephone conversation that I was thinking of moving to San Francisco. And Susan immediately said, "Take me with you. I have lots of contacts in San Francisco."
I assume that's
So-
not being admitted for the truth of the matter.
Right, right. It's a statement out of court, but it's not for the truth of that.
So did you, what agreement did you have with Susan about that place?
Well, Susan introduced me to brokers, and I looked at various houses, and eventually, through one of the brokers that Susan introduced me to, I bought the 3-story house on Telegraph Place.
For those not familiar with San Francisco and Telegraph Place or Telegraph Hill, describe briefly what that was.
Hard to describe it. And these people must all have been to San Francisco more than I have.
Okay. So it was a 3-story building?
Yes, it needed a gut renovation. And a Chinese lady had lived there for 30 years and had done no work to it. So what we planned on was that I was going to live on the top 2 floors, and Susan was going to live on the bottom floor, which connected to a big backyard for her dogs.
We've heard a lot about Susan's idiosyncrasies and her fears. Did she have a fear of being on an upper floor of a building?
Yes.
So what did you, just briefly, what did you do about your plans to renovate the 3-story townhouse or building on Telegraph Hill?
I hired an architect that Susan's broker recommended by the name of Mike Yoshida, and he prepared plans for 52 Telegraph Place, and the plans got submitted to the building department.
Now, were there some difficulties in getting approval to start construction?
Yes.
What were those difficulties?
Well, part of the difficulty was it was Telegraph Place, where they had lots of, it was near Telegraph. So there were lots of rules about what you could and could not do.
And so what was the status of that building in the fall of 2000?
On the fall of 2000, November 12th actually, of 2000, it was, well actually I guess for me it started on October 31st. My sister called me.
Stop, that wasn't what my question was about. What were the plans for Telegraph Hill, and what was the status of those plans in the fall of 2000?
By the fall of 2000, we had submitted plans to the building department, which showed one apartment on the ground floor and another apartment on the 2nd and 3rd floor.
And that was to be Susan on the ground floor and you on the top floor?
Yeah.
All right. But had construction started yet or not?
We had done some initial work. The first floor had a 1-bedroom apartment and a garage for 1 car. The previous owner had taken the wall out between the garage and the apartment. So the way it was set up, either your car was in your living room or your living room was a garage, depending upon how you looked at it.
Okay, and you mentioned also now in September of 2000, you bought the Jones property. And your purpose for the Jones property was so you could have a place to live during construction?
Correct.
All right. How did Susan express her feelings about moving to San Francisco with you in this new building?
She was
Again, Your Honor,
excited.
not for the, I assume not for the truth of the matter asserted.
Yes.
Let's see.
Yes.
Is there a non-hearsay purpose? Let's see.
can we briefly approach?
Yes? So, what we discussed is that sometimes people make statements, and it could be hearsay, right? Often to prove some point that you can't cross-examine the person if they're not here, right? So, what the point here is that if this statement was made, then the question is, what do you take from it? Well, only the state of mind. It expresses not the truth of the matter, that this is going to happen, but the state of mind of the speaker. So it's not really offered for the truth of the matter. Whether or not it's true is not really a concern. If the statement was made, then that statement is relevant only to demonstrate the state of mind of the speaker. Slightly different idea. So you may continue.
Okay. I think the statement that you mentioned was, Susan said, "Take me with you." Did you agree to take her with you?
Sure.
And how did you feel about that?
I felt good about it. I did not know hardly anybody in San Francisco. There was only one person I knew, David Fetchheimer, who used to be my investigator here, who died. But I knew, other than David Fetchheimer, I had no friends or anything in San Francisco.
Okay. Well, and the architect Mike Yoshida, were you? How did you feel about the plans that he made or drew up for you?
It looked great. There was a sunroof, an elevator. I thought it would be worth a whole lot more money than I put into it.
Okay. And then, what did you do about the apartment or the townhouse that you bought on Jones Street? Did you ever furnish it?
Wait a minute, the townhouse on Telegraph Place, the condominium's on Jones Street. The condominium was in perfect condition. It was a brand new building, just a matter of moving in.
Okay. Was it furnished or did you furnish it?
I shipped my furniture from the Dallas apartment, which I gave up.
Okay. When did you ship that furniture?
I shipped it from Dallas.
Oh, no, I said when.
When?
Yes.
It would have been November of 2000.
Okay. Now I'm going to switch gears for a moment and touch on what you started to talk about a moment ago. On October the 31st of 2000, did you get some startling news?
Yes, my sister told me.
What did you hear from your sister?
My sister told me that my brother Douglas, who was running the family business then, had heard from the PR firm that the business used, that they had heard from their friends in the media that Janine Pirro, who at the time was the Westchester County District Attorney, was making a big political fuss about reopening the investigation into the missing person known as Kathy Durst.
Okay, this is October 31st of 2000.
Correct.
Several things you mentioned I want to ask you about. Earlier, when Kathy had disappeared, your father and Douglas and the lawyer didn't want to hire a PR firm about that issue. They wanted to use Susan Berman. But now they've got a PR firm. It's the year 2000. Was that PR firm, what was the purpose of that PR firm?
Well, they always had a PR firm. It's just that when Kathy went missing, it did not seem like they should tie that together with a PR firm for the business.
Okay, so who is Marty Matz?
He was the agent for the PR firm. The PR firm was called Howard Rubenstein Associates, and Marty Matz was the specific individual that handled the Durst organization account.
As a PR man and involved with a PR firm, did he have contacts in the media?
Yes, he's the one who said that the New York Times and the Daily News were going to do stories about Janine Pirro opening up this new investigation into the disappearance of Kathy Durst.
Well, first, did you know who Janine Pirro was at that time?
I had never heard of Janine Pirro. At that time, she was the district attorney of Westchester County. And according to my sister, Janine Pirro was looking to run for a statewide office and was going to use this reinvestigation of Kathy Durst to get lots of free publicity.
What, when you heard that, did you have any kind of meetings with your brother or with the people in the Durst organization, or your sister?
Well, my sister was not in the Durst organization. She got her information from Douglas. And according to my sister, they wanted me to retain the criminal lawyer for the great big law firm that they used. And that a meeting had been scheduled for the following week. The criminal lawyer for the law firm was Joel Cohn.
And that's C-O-H-E-N?
Yeah,
And the name of the law firm was what?
Strook and Levan.
And Strook is spelled S-T-R-O-O-K?
S-T-R-O-O-C-K.
C-K, okay. So did you choose this lawyer, or did Douglas or somebody in the Durst organization choose the lawyer?
Well, Douglas went to a real estate lawyer with Strook and Levan, one of many real estate lawyers that they had. They said they had one criminal lawyer whose name was Joel Cohn. Douglas said I should meet with Joel Cohn and decide if I want him to represent me.
Learning that Janine Pirro, but did you learn some things about Janine Pirro after they told you who she was?
Yes.
Learning that Janine Pirro was wanting to reopen an investigation in Kathy Durst, did you think, oh boy, now they're going to try to find Kathy?
What I thought was, what I was told was that she was doing this because she wanted to get all this publicity, which she figured she would get from going after this Rich Durst person. I saw her on television 2 days after my sister told me she was reopening the investigation.
And what did you see on television?
I saw this little lady dressed in what looked like the latest fashion, announcing that she was going to get Robert Durst one way or another.
Almost 18 years had passed since Kathy disappeared. When Kathy disappeared, you were not portrayed as a suspect in her disappearance in the media, were you?
No,
But now, what was changed with the way Janine Pirro was coming at it?
Objection leading.
So the
Well-
last question was leading, but this one is not. This one's not leading, so overruled.
So you may answer.
I think the judge ruled I can't answer
No,
that.
this
No,
one you
that
can
was the
answer.
previous one. Let me just restate the question. What had changed with the way Janine Pirro was attacking this?
Well, she was saying that I did it, whatever it was that had happened to Kathy Durst. Robert Durst did it.
Did you have discussions with the lawyers that Douglas had found for you?
Yes, and I'd never had a criminal lawyer, so I did not know what I should ask.
Were you concerned?
Oh yes, very concerned.
Were you scared?
Yes.
Why were you scared?
Well, when I saw this little lady said, I'm going to get Durst, Robert Durst, one way or another, that was very scary.
Okay. So what happened in the next few days?
Well, I met with Joe Cohn and Douglas Durst and Wendy Krieger and her little husband, Dougie Krieger, and Joe Cohn. And what I know now is there's two kinds of criminal lawyers. There are the criminal lawyers who do white-collar crime, which used to be done with a pencil, but now I understand is done with a computer. The other kind of criminal lawyer do what I call no-collar crime, which is what we all think of as crime. Murder and rape and burglary and robbery and assault and those things. Joe Cohn was clearly a white-collar criminal lawyer. This I know now. I did not know it then. Joe Cohn said, after his contacts and Morty Matt's contacts, that this is going to be a big investigation, that they must have a very large budget. The newspapers reported that Janine Pirro had sent divers into Lake Truesdale, 6 divers. That's when Joe Cohn said they must have a very big budget. And she's made such a fuss about this that she's going to be under enormous pressure to charge you with something. He said that there's an excellent possibility you will need to make a substantial amount of, put up a substantial amount of money for bail. Probably as much as $1 million. And he said that I should give him my passport, because then if I was charged, he could tell the judge that he had my passport and that I was not going to be running away.
Did that frighten you?
I gave him a passport.
Did it frighten you? What he said to you about what the future may hold?
Yes.
So what did you do in the next few days?
I panicked. And I flew to Dallas, Texas, where I still had the apartment. I drove to Galveston, Texas, disguised myself as a woman, rented in a cheap apartment, and planned on hiding out there.
All right, let me stop you and take you through that step by step. You panicked, you flew to Dallas. Why Dallas?
I had an apartment in Dallas.
Was Debbie any part of your decision-making process?
No,
You and Debbie were not living together, is that right?
we were not living together.
What did you talk to Debbie about what was going on?
A little bit. She did not understand it at all.
All right. So she wasn't part of your decision to run to Dallas or to Galveston.
No,
Then, did you and Debbie make any plans then?
we got married.
Why?
I wanted to be married.
Why?
I wanted to be able to leave my inheritance to Debbie. The way the trusts work, you could only leave your trust to an issue or a spouse. An issue is a child, and I don't have any children. I wanted Debbie to get it.
All right. Did you and Debbie get married?
Yes.
Where and when?
Well, I don't have it. It would have been approximately December 12th.
All right. I want you to slow down a second. Are you certain of that date? Or
No,
in fact, you earlier today, you said a completely different date. Were you confused?
this is the day I got married.
Yes. The day you got married.
Kind of day that everybody remembers, but I don't remember. I don't know what I said earlier today.
All right. Are you tired?
I'm not tired.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you think before you answer and make sure that you're sure of the answer. So that's why I'm asking. I know your condition. Let me ask the next question. What did you do next about going to Dallas or to Galveston?
The newspaper articles all came out November 12th. All three newspapers had a big story. Janine Pirro and Durst. I flew
Just stop a second. What was the tone of the newspaper articles? We know the New York Times is more staid and not a scandal sheet, but what was the tone of the newspaper articles?
This is very hard to answer and still follow the judge's instructions.
Listen to the question,
Yeah.
and let's see, maybe you need to, the tone of the newspaper articles. To ask a related question. I don't understand what the problem is
Well-
actually, but go ahead.
Okay, let's take them one at a time. What did the New York Times article say? Briefly.
Objection, calling for hearsay. Your Honor, could I ask
Yeah.
maybe
It-
Mr. DeGuerin we'll waive. Mr. DeGuerin wants to lead him in this area to comply with the court's prior rulings. We don't have an objection.
Yeah, he may lead the witness in this area.
Let me ask a question now, Bob. Were the New York Post and the New York Daily News, were those articles very frightening to you?
I was a suspect.
Were they lurid?
Well, there were no details.
What was your reaction to the articles?
I flew to Dallas and drove to Galveston.
All right. How did you choose Galveston?
I had been there before. It's a little bitty island right where the turnpike ends on the Gulf Coast. Lots of old houses that are broken up into apartments. Seemed like a place I could go and stay and not be recognized and not run into anybody I knew.
Did you want to hide? Did you want to hide?
Yes.
So, what plan did you make about hiding?
I disguised myself as a woman. I rented an apartment.
Tell the jury how you did that. How did you think to disguise yourself as a woman?
I put on a wig
Where'd you get the wig?
at a wig store
Where?
in Dallas.
And how did you dress?
Well, I got a big sweatshirt and cargo pants. I shaved real good.
Did you? What about your voice?
You know, my voice is very recognizable. I knew I would not be able to speak to anybody, so I wrote on a 3x5 card, "I am mute." Anyone who spoke to me, I would show them the card.
Well, how did you go about renting the apartment in Galveston?
I telephoned to help a apartment. I got the newspaper, the classifieds, and there were apartments for rent. So I telephoned one of the apartments for rent, and I said that I was helping a mute woman find an apartment.
Who did you talk to?
The man's name was Klaus Dillman.
And who did you say you were, the person calling?
I said I was a friend of this mute woman who wanted to rent his apartment.
What did Mr. Dillman say to you on the phone?
He said, "Great, I'll meet you there in half an hour."
All right. And what did you say?
I said, "I'll meet you there in half an hour."
Did you, Bob Durst, meet him there?
I put on my wig and I met with him using my alias,
And your alias was what?
Dorothy Signer.
Is Dorothy Signer a real person?
Yes,
Who is she?
she was a high school sweetheart.
Okay. So you show up at the apartment. And what happens then?
Well, the apartment's very small, so it takes him 30 seconds to show it to me. And I write on a pad, I'll take it. So he gives me the lease to sign, and he asks for a month's deposit and a month's rent. and he gives me the keys.
And did you pay him?
Yeah,
Cash?
cash.
Okay, what happened next?
Nothing happened.
Well, did you move in?
Yeah,
How did you move in? Stop. Was it furnished?
no.
How did you furnish it?
I bought furniture from a furniture store right near the apartment.
What did you get?
I got a bed and a table and a chair and a television.
Okay. Did you stay there?
Yes,
What did you do about being able to be traced there? Did you try not to be able to be traced there? What did you do?
I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know what your question is.
Okay. Were you concerned about you, Bob Durst, being able to be traced there?
I made sure I wasn't traced there. I did not use my Robert Durst credit cards or checks or my cell phone.
And the purpose for doing that, why were you doing that? Why were you getting that place?
I was hiding from Janine Pirro.
Did she frighten you?
Yes,
How long did you stay there?
3 weeks.
Did anything happen during those 3 weeks?
Well, that's just that nothing happened during those 3 weeks. I went online most days and checked for news about Janine Pirro from Westchester County, and there was absolutely nothing about Robert Durst.
How did you go online if you didn't want to be traced?
The library had computers,
What library?
Rosenberg Library,
Where was that located in
2 blocks from the apartment.
Okay, let me finish. Where was that located in reference to the apartment on Avenue K?
2 blocks away.
Okay. What is the Rosenberg Library? Let me ask it this way. Is it a free public library?
Yes,
Could you go online with computers there?
yes.
Had you made plans before all this to spend Christmas with Susan Berman?
Yes,
What were your plans for Susan Berman and Christmas?
I was going to meet her on December 22nd, and we were going to do a staycation in Los Angeles. She wanted to do all the things that tourists do when they go to Los Angeles. We were going to go to Catalina Island. We were going to go to Disneyland. We were going to go to Century 21 City, whatever it is. And I had offered to buy her furniture for $15.27 Benedict Canyon because there was very little furniture there.
Were you aware of her financial circumstances then?
More or less.
Had you been aware of her financial circumstances for some time?
Yeah.
What had you done about that?
I had given her money when she asked for it.
I want to show you a check that's already in evidence as a government exhibit. It's a check dated March 3rd, 1999. Can we see that, please? And I'm not sure what people's exhibit number it is. R13, Chris.
Show it to Mr. Milius.
This is actually, looks slightly different than what we previously marked, so it's probably better to mark it. I think we're on M.
Okay, defense M.
Okay, if you'll pull back from it a little bit, there's 3 checks on that same page, I think. And the top one, which is the check number immediately before the middle one, is to a Holly Lawrence for $10,000. What's that for? Can you see that?
Not really.
All right, the top check on this picture, it's on the screen over here too, is to Holly Lawrence, it appears, February 24th, 99 for $10,000. Check number 644. Do you know what that one was for?
No.
Okay. The next check in sequence is dated March the 3rd, and it's check number 645 to Susan Berman, $25,000. That's in March of 99. Was there any idea in March of 99 that Janine Pirro was going to get involved in your case?
Of course not.
That's a full year and a half before you learned that Janine Pirro was reopening the case, correct?
Yes.
Why did you give Susan Berman $25,000 in March of 99?
It was in March of 99. Susan Berman must have asked for it.
Do you know what her financial circumstances were then?
Well, they were not good.
Did you expect to get that back?
No.
All right. Thank you. That was M, did you say?
Yes. You may approach Mr. DeGuerin.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Welcome.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. So we kind of got out of sequence, but you mentioned that I asked you about having plans to visit Susan, pre-existing plans to visit Susan for Christmas of 2000, and you mentioned getting her furniture for 1527 Benedict Canyon. What did you know about her living circumstances at 1527 Benedict Canyon in the year of 2000?
Well, I had visited her there. There was very little furniture, and the landlord was not keeping the place up.
Okay. So, what was your offer about furniture to Susan?
I offered, and she said, she got back to me and said that Ashley Furniture, if you chose what you wanted by 2 p.m. and paid for it, they would guarantee delivery by 8 p.m. So I said, that'll be fine.
Okay.
I left out that she wanted to, during her staycation, she wanted to stay at Chateau Mansour.
Is that a local hotel here?
Yes,
Nice? Is it nice?
I've never been there.
Okay. All right.
We'll
Now,
stipulate it's nice. Inexpensive.
I know
okay.
that one. Okay.
I can't stipulate because I don't know, but I'll take it on faith.
Okay. Not the Marmont. Mansour.
Mansour, was it Mansour or Marmont?
One or the other. I mean, there's only one. I'm probably mispronouncing it.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to the sequence where we were in Galveston. You're hiding out in Galveston, basically, is that right?
Yeah.
Did you meet Morris Black?
I met Morris Black the first night I slept in the apartment in Galveston.
Describe your meeting with Morris Black.
Well, I had on my wig, and this old guy came out of the apartment next door and told me to make sure I always turned off the hall light. And I flashed him my I am mute card and walked out of the building.
Were you wearing your wig and your kind of unisex loose clothes?
Yeah,
And what did he do?
I left. I assume he left too. He was headed out when I met him.
Where did you go?
I went for a walk on the seawall.
How far is the seawall from the apartment on Avenue K?
I don't know, a mile, maybe less.
Okay. For those who haven't been to Galveston, can you kind of describe what the seawall is?
Describe a seawall.
Yes, please.
I'm in difficulty surprised. It's a wall. And when high tide comes in, the water goes up to the wall. And when there's low tide, there's a lot of beach available. I don't know what else to say.
Okay. I don't want to compare it with the beach at Santa Monica or Venice Beach or anything like that, but is it a nice beach in...
Well, it's the Gulf of Mexico. The beaches in the Gulf of Mexico are not as nice as the beaches in the Pacific Ocean.
Stipulated. Okay. So, in the next, you said you stayed there for about 3 weeks?
Yes,
And what did you do during that time?
not very much.
Did you continue to wear your disguise?
For a little while, most of the time, I took it off.
You mentioned also that, well, did Morris Black ever see you when you were not wearing the disguise during that first 3 weeks?
No,
When you went out wearing the disguise, where would you go?
Galveston's a small island. It's a touristy place. Along the seawall, there's restaurants and bars.
And is that where you would go?
Yes,
Did you ever have any incidents wearing the wig and going to a bar or a restaurant?
Just irrelevant.
Sustained?
Were you comfortable wearing the disguise?
no, I hated wearing the wig. I get hair in my mouth all the time.
Were you, did you get exercise? Were you a jogger?
You know, I would go jogging.
Did you wear the wig when you went jogging?
A couple of times and I stopped
Why?
because I would get hair in my mouth.
How did you keep it on? How did you keep it from falling off?
Just irrelevant.
A roll.
You may answer.
Wigs come with a with a rubber liner on the inside, and as long as you don't shake your head too vigorously, the wig tends to stay on.
Well, if you're jogging, your head's moving pretty vigorously.
We're getting a little bit
Yeah,
off,
well, that's-
off track now. I was curious about how the wigs.
So it wasn't relevant. Fair enough.
Can you let your curiosity go for one more question?
All right.
How did you keep it on while you're jogging?
Well, I did.
Okay. All right. Now, you also mentioned that you were going to the library and you were checking online about Janine Pirro. As the days wore on after you first got there to your hiding spot, what happened to the publicity in New York with Janine Pirro?
It went away.
Okay. So what did you decide to do?
I decided I was going to go to New York.
Did you?
I did.
How did you get to New York?
I took a Greyhound bus.
You took a Greyhound bus?
From Houston to New York City.
How long did it take?
36 hours.
Why did you take the Greyhound bus?
Because if I flew, I would have to show myself as Robert Durst from Houston, and I did not want to leave any tracks that I had ever been anywhere near Galveston.
Okay, when you went to New York, where did you go?
I went to my apartment in Battery Park City.
Did you talk to anybody that had been interested in your welfare, in the Durst organization or?
Yes, my answering machine was full of messages.
Where, when you checked your answering machine there, what did you find?
Joe Cohn, the criminal lawyer, had called me a dozen times and was threatening to quit, telling me if I did not respond to his calls, he did not want to represent me. My sister called several times. Douglas Durst called several times. Deborah Chariton called a bunch of times.
Had you told Deborah where you were going?
No,
Had you told your sister where you were going?
I didn't tell anybody where I was
I'm going
going.
to go one by one. Had you told Joel Cohen, the criminal lawyer, where you were going?
No,
And then, had you told Douglas where you were going?
no,
Did you return Joel Cohen's call?
yes.
And what was his complaint?
He wanted to meet again and to discuss what we would do if Janine Pirro went ahead and indicted me.
Now, you mentioned that he had, on the messages, had said that he had threatened to quit. When he met with him, did he threaten to quit again?
Well, I told him that he had scared me, asking for my passport, and that I could not handle.
Yes. Let's pause there, and there's an objection. We're back in session.
Let me clarify something, Bob. I'm not asking about what you said to Joel Cohen or what he said to you. You got his messages on the phone that he threatened to quit, but regarding Janine Pirro, had Janine Pirro charged you with anything?
No,
To this date, has Janine Pirro or anybody
Checks
charged?
relevance.
Hello.
Did Janine Pirro ever charge you with anything?
no.
Nonetheless, were you still scared?
Well, as time went on, I got over it.
All right. All right, you're in New York. You've gone back there after being in Galveston for about 3 weeks. Now it's early December, I suppose. Is that when it is?
Yeah,
So what were your plans?
my plans were to marry Debbie,
All right.
and I had made plans. My former neighbor and friend in Trinidad, Diane Boucher, Bueche, had been having problems with her female equipment for a year, and she was going to have a major procedure done on the 20th of December. The procedure was supposed to be done inpatient, but they allowed some patients to do it outpatient as long as somebody drove her to the appointment and picked her up afterwards and agreed to stay with her for 2 days.
All right. That's a new name, a new subject, Diane Boucher, and she was your friend in Trinidad?
Yes, she was a woman who sold me the house I lived in Trinidad.
All right.
She had used to live there.
So you were in New York. What were your plans about travel in late December?
I was going to travel like I usually traveled. I was going to fly to San Francisco, and from San Francisco take United Express to Humboldt County Airport.
Did you do that? First, did you fly from New York to San Francisco?
Yes,
What date?
December 19th. I should have gone sooner than that, but I kept putting it off for some reason or other.
All right. You mentioned that you had married Debbie. Did you and Debbie live together?
We had stopped living together a year and a half before we got married.
But so after you got married, though, did you and Debbie live together?
We never lived together again.
All right. So you fly from New York to San Francisco. What do you do then?
Well, then I flew United. United Express has the only flights to Humboldt County. At the very end of the United terminal in San Francisco, there's a small terminal. You go down an escalator, and there's a small terminal for United Express.
And so what did you do?
So I went to United Express terminal, and I realized I had 3 other things I needed to do in Humboldt County, in addition to assisting Diane Boucher. I had an
What else did you have to do in Humboldt County?
I had an office in Eureka, and I had some files in the office I wanted to get. I had an SUV that was parked at Harper Ford. I wanted to pick up the SUV.
Okay. And did you do that?
But when I got to United Express, I realized that somehow I had mislaid the keys to the SUV, and that I had also mislaid the book I'd been reading on the flight from San Francisco, and I had also misplaced my cell phone. So when I got to Humboldt County Airport, I telephoned the one taxi company in Humboldt County and asked them to pick me up at the airport and drive me to Harper Ford. I called Harper Ford and told them I was going to come pick up my car and that they should make me an extra set of keys because I had lost the keys that I had.
So was the,
That's, I want you to speak right into that microphone. Your voice is dropping off a little bit, Mr. Durst, so maybe turn towards that microphone when you
I think I can
answer.
get it a little bit closer to it.
You could do that also. Thank you.
Okay, so, did you go to Harper Ford?
Yes,
And were they able to make an extra set of keys?
yes.
So then what did you do?
I drove to Diane Boucher's house.
And then what?
I called United Airlines, got lost and found, and told them that I'd left my book, my cell phone, and my keys on whatever the flight number was that I had taken from New York.
Were you able to retrieve them?
The lady said, you might get your book back, but you're not going to get your cell phone back.
What about your keys?
She didn't tell me anything about my keys.
Did you ever get anything back?
No,
All right. So where did you spend that night?
with Diane Boucher.
And she lived in Eureka, not in Trinidad, is that right?
No, she lived in Trinidad.
What's the
She was
difference?
my neighbor in Trinidad.
So explain to us, what's the difference between Eureka and Trinidad?
It's about 20-minute drive.
Close to each other.
It's about 20 miles between them. You're on Route 101, so it takes about 20 minutes.
Okay. So you stayed with Diane Boucher that night, that was the 19th?
Correct.
And then what did you do?
Well, we got up early in the morning, and I drove her to Humboldt County Hospital and left her there. I then went to Bank of America and withdrew $9,000 so that I would have cash to buy marijuana from my friend in Garbersville.
And you say you withdrew 9,000. Was that a bank account that was in your name?
Yes,
Did you get the money?
yes.
All right. What did you do next?
Well, I drove to Garbersville, which is about an hour south of Eureka. We had made plans, Diane and I had, that she would call and leave a message on my voicemail. I did not have my cell phone because I had lost it. So she would call and leave a message on the voicemail as to what time I should pick her up.
All right. And did you drive to Garbersville?
I did.
What'd you do there?
Well, a friend of mine from years ago, we were both at UCLA. He lived in Garbersville and earned a living selling marijuana. So I went to his house next to a redwood forest in Garbersville and bought a pound of marijuana.
Okay. What did you do next?
I had lunch with him in Garbersville.
And then?
I telephoned my voicemail to see what message was from Diane, and she said everything went good and she'd be ready around 3 o'clock.
All right. What did you do then after that?
I drove to Eureka Hospital to get Diane.
Did you pick her up?
I got there about 45 minutes early. They brought her out in a wheelchair, but she was able to walk, and she had a shopping bag full of, in her word, industrial strength tampons and pads and adults' diapers.
Was that because of the procedure that she'd gone through?
Yes, and she was supposed to do nothing for 2 days except drink lots of fluid. And if the bleeding had not considerably slowed down or preferably stopped altogether, she should call the hospital in 2 days.
All right. So where did you go after you picked up Diane at the hospital?
Went to her house.
Now, what were your plans for Susan? I know about the staycation and so forth, but what were your plans to do with Susan? Particularly about the townhouse in San Francisco.
I was planning on driving to Los Angeles on the 22nd, so I could stay with Diane for the 2 days that she was supposed to have somebody babysitting for her. I've done that drive half a dozen times from Humboldt County to Los Angeles on Route 5, and I was enormously regretting it. Not looking forward to it at all. A whole trip takes about 12 or 13 hours, and the whole way there's an 18-wheeler in front of you, an 18-wheeler in back of you, and an 18-wheeler next to you. Even the best of cars, the air that comes in through the vents tends to be dusty and oily.
So you weren't looking forward to that drive, but my question was, what did you and Susan have planned for after the staycation in Los Angeles, where you'd go to touristy places? What would you do after that?
On Wednesday, which I believe was 27th, let me just do the days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, Wednesday the 27th, we intended to drive to Big Sur from Los Angeles and stay overnight in the Big Sur Inn. And Susan was going to have friends of hers meet us at a famous old restaurant called Nepenthe, Nepenthe. And then on Thursday, the 28th, we were going to drive to San Francisco, meet the architect Mike Yoshida at the townhouse. He was going to bring examples of different kinds of tile and catalogs for stoves and sinks, refrigerators for the kitchen, and bathroom furniture,
Mr. DeGuerin,
fixtures.
Mr. Durst said the Thursday the 28th. I just want to make sure that you're talking about the same. Thursday wouldn't be the 28th. I just want to make sure that
You hear what Mr. Lewin said? He wants to make sure you're accurate on what you're saying. Were these the plans that you had with Susan? That on the 28th you were going to have a meeting with Mike Yoshida?
Yes,
Okay. So this was future.
say that again.
This was future, immediate future, but it was, let me see how to ask it. I want to,
Well, those were our plans.
okay.
Drive to Big Sur on the 27th and meet at the house on the 28th
Okay,
of 2000.
all right. So, you took Diane Boucher home. Did you stay there that night?
Stayed with Diane until the 22nd.
On the 22nd, what did you do?
Around 11 o'clock in the morning, I left Trinidad and drove south on Route 5.
Now, there's several ways to get from Northern California to LA. Route 5 is one, I think 101 is another, the Highway 1 is another. Why did you choose Route 5?
Well, that's the fast way to go.
Okay,
It's the ugliest way, but it's the fastest.
all right. Why not just fly from San Francisco to LA?
Well, we intended to drive from Los Angeles up to Big Sur. I thought about flying and renting a car, and I decided not to.
Okay. All right. So you get up about 11 o'clock and you start driving south on Route 5. Is that right?
Yes,
And that is, again, the date?
I don't understand what,
What day was it? What date was it?
the 22nd was Friday.
All right. Is that the date that you're talking about?
Yeah,
All right. So on the 22nd, on Friday, you begin driving from Humboldt County on Highway 5 or Interstate 5 south toward Los Angeles.
correct.
Is that can you drive nonstop or do you have to refuel?
Definitely have to refuel, probably twice.
Okay. Tell us about that drive. How far did you get?
Well, I have to back up a little bit. In 1998, I started having strange, strong headaches. I went to see the doctor I used in Humboldt County Hospital, and he sent me to a neurologist. The neurologist, after I described these headaches, and I would get this sharp pain in my forehead, and I would see a light out from the corner of my eye. I described the headaches to the neurologist. He asked me if anybody in my family had ever had migraines. I told him my father had migraines. He asked if my father was living, and I said no. And then he said, well, he left you something. And then the guy started laughing, like this was the funniest thing he'd ever heard.
Was it funny to you?
Wasn't funny at all.
All right, so you had migraines that were diagnosed in 1998, is that right?
Correct.
All right, so you digressed. On the drive from San Francisco toward Los Angeles on Highway 5, tell us what happened.
I got to close to Bakersfield. I started getting the symptoms of my migraine headaches. And one of the things that the doctor had prescribed for me was called a Percocet.
What is a Percocet?
It is an opiate, a very strong opiate. I don't think they use anymore.
Did you have any with you?
Yes, I always carried them.
So what
I was
happened?
told that once I took a pill, I should lie down and do nothing. He told me stories about how people had badly cut or burned their hand while they were on opiates.
Truth of the matter, Your Honor.
Yes.
Well,
What,
yeah, I
what
think
you
it would-
understood?
I don't know that it's. All right, I admitted that for the limited purpose, explaining the action that he's about to describe. Go ahead.
So, basically, you understood what your symptoms were?
I knew I had to get off the road.
All right? What did you do?
Well, I knew I was just north of Bakersfield. But as soon as I saw any signs advertising motels, I got off the road, checked into a motel, went to my room, telephoned Susan.
Let me stop you right there. At this, do you know what hotel or motel it was north of
No.
Bakersfield?
I don't know.
When you drove in there, did you check in under your own name?
Yes,
And did you use any kind of credit card?
I use my American Express. And I told the clerk that I would pay cash when I left.
All right. So, did the clerk require some kind of identification?
Yes,
What identification did you show?
my license.
And your license was in the name of whom?
Me.
Robert Durst.
Yes,
And you also showed your American Express card.
yeah, he imprinted my American Express card.
Okay. All right. So you checked into the motel. What did you do then?
I went to my room, I took the Percocet, put on the TV, called Susan Berman.
All right, stop there. What time was it?
Around 11.
11 p.m.?
Yes,
And you called Susan from the room?
yes,
Where did you call her?
at 1527 Benedict Canyon.
Did you have that number handy?
Yes,
Okay. Did you reach her?
yes.
Tell the jury what happened.
Well, Susan monitors her calls. She puts the answering machine up on the highest volume. So when somebody calls, she waits for the person to say, it's so-and-so. And then if she wants to talk to them, she talks to them. Or she calls them back in the future, or whatever it is she wants to do. So I heard the phone rang, the answering machine picked up, and I said, Susie, it's Bobby, pick up the phone. And
Did she pick up the phone?
yeah,
Did you have a conversation?
yeah.
What did you tell her?
She said, Bobby, are you here? And I said, no, I'm having one of my episodes. I had to stop. I'm in Bakersfield. She says, poor Bobby.
Did
And
you
she
hear
al-
any? Let me stop you a second. Did you hear anything in the background?
Her television.
All right. Go ahead. What happened next?
So she says, poor Bobby, do you want me to come get you? And I said, no, I should be mostly better by the morning. She said, I'm gonna call whatever the chateau is. Marmont, is that it?
Well, I don't know. Is it Marmont or what's the other one?
There's a famous hotel here in Los Angeles that's named Mar something or other. Chateau Mar something or other.
All right. Go ahead. And she said,
She said, I'll call the hotel and I'll do my Susie best, but I expect they'll bill us for tonight. If I don't call the hotel, they'll cancel the rest of our reservation.
so was your plan to stay at Susie's house on 1527 Benedict Canyon or to stay at a hotel?
We were going to stay at the hotel.
Okay. When you say we were going to stay at the hotel, does that mean
We were
you?
going to have separate rooms. We were both going to stay at the hotel.
That was my next question. Separate rooms, why?
because that's the way we are.
Were you and Susie ever boyfriend, girlfriend, lovers, or not?
No, never, never, never.
However, were you close?
We were never boyfriend, girlfriend, lovers.
But were you close?
Yes. But we did not share hotel rooms.
Okay. All right, so what happened next? Did you conclude the telephone call with Susie?
During the telephone call, twice she interrupted. Oh, she told me about the furniture she'd picked out. What else did she tell me? Oh, and she got in the literature on going to Catalina Island, and she'd chosen which boat to take and stuff like that. And twice she interrupted our conversation to talk to somebody.
Did you hear who she was talking to? You hear anybody else?
No,
Did you hear what she said?
no.
Okay. All right, what else happened during that conversation and how did it end?
That's pretty much how it ended. Oh, I guess she asked me if I'd made the arrangements with Mike Yoshida, the architect, and I said I had. And she said she had made the arrangements with Big Sur Inn and with her friends from Big Sur.
Okay. So then, what did you do?
I went to sleep.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock or thereafter at night. You're at this motel. How long did you stay at the motel?
Just overnight.
What happened the next morning?
I went to the office, gave him cash so that he would not ding my credit card, drank a gallon of coffee, and drove to Los Angeles.
What route did you take?
Say that again.
What route did you take from Bakersfield?
Route 5.
All right. And for those that aren't familiar with it, how did you get into Los Angeles? It's a huge place.
Well, I was going to Benedict Canyon. I intended to take Sunset, but I got lost and ended up on Laurel Canyon.
All right. And how close is Laurel Canyon to Benedict Canyon?
From Laurel Canyon, I was able to get onto Sunset, and from Sunset, I was able to get on Benedict Canyon.
And your intent was to do what?
To go to Susan's house.
Ron, I think this is a good time to quit.
You have 2 more minutes.
Yes?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pick up Monday at 9 o'clock. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. Do not read or listen to any media, newspaper, television, online accounts of this. I'm making a book for you. I'm saving it. You'll get it at the end. So take care, everyone. Be careful. Be healthy. Be safe. We'll see you at 9 o'clock on Monday morning.
I needed to put something on the record with the jury.
Yeah.
Thank you. is that Mr. DeGuerin asked Mr. Durst to testify, Mr. Durst testified regarding conversations that he had with his attorney, Mr. Scapetta. Now, making things a little bit more interesting is that according to Mr. Durst, you had Douglas Durst there and Seymour Durst there. That means there is no attorney-client privilege. That means even before Mr. DeGuerin started asking questions that caused Mr. Durst to give information about what was said during that meeting, it wouldn't have mattered because according to Mr. Durst, with those other individuals there was no attorney-client privilege anyway.
Unless they're all declining.
Well, but they can't be.
Well, you could have I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But, okay.
So that's issue one. So I intend on fully exploring that conversation and what happened. Number two, Mr. DeGuerin also elicited information repeatedly about the conversation with Mr. Cohen. As the court's aware, even though I'm under no obligation, I asked for the recess, the break, to go back in chambers to let counsel know that Mr. Durst has already testified regarding the conversations with Mr. Cohen. I don't think that honestly, there's a whole lot there anyway. And Mr. DeGuerin, I think judiciously decided not to go any further on that. But I wanted to make sure that that was on the record because our conversation in the back was off the record.
That's right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'd like to give our reporters a break. I did want to address a lingering jury instruction issue and take care of that today. I don't know if Mr. Durst wants to be here for that discussion. It doesn't seem necessary or interesting for him, but of course he's welcome to be here. If he'll talk to them about whether he wants to waive his presence, he can get on his way, and we can pick this up at 15 minutes.
Your Honor, how long do you think this is going to take?
5 minutes,
Okay.
but I want to give
Mr.
our...
Durst will waive his presence.
Right, Mr. DeGuerin? Agreed? Counsel agreed that he waives his presence under 977B for this limited purpose of discussing one jury instruction.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, we're going to take a recess for our reporters. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Is that okay? And you're excused. You'll be excused.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
we have transportation, so 15 minutes.
10-minute break, 5 minutes on the
Great,
instruction.
thank you.
Okay? And I gave you a draft. I mean,
Yes.
that will work for you,
Yes,
okay?
thank you, Your Honor. Got two more lines for John Benicio.